Hello gaming friends, it's Drex back with another random video. Today we are going over some Space Engineers. I've been playing it a while with some friends, and one of the first things I noticed about it is the progression is a steep learning curve, and I'm making a quick start video to help some friends out and possibly you in the process. A couple easy cheesy ways to get going, a couple recommendations to make life a little bit easier and better, and let's just dive right into it. For starters, loading into straight vanilla right now. If you look up here, it's not in experimental mode. To turn experimental mode on, we're going to go to Options, Game, Experimental Mode. Yes, we want to agree to this. This is what's going to allow us to run some mods. I am going to be running a couple mods on this for quality of life. Mostly so that you can hear me, because some of the tools in this game are ridiculously loud. Alright, we're going to go ahead and go to a new game. And there are lots of scenarios and options in here, but we are going to go with Star System. This is a sandbox environment. You have access to all planets. We are going to customize this, and let's just go with tutorial for the name, and we're going to choose some mods. There's only a couple mods on here that I really want to put in here, which is sneaky sounds, which will help with those loud tools. And I'm also going to put on colorful icons, just to make the items a little bit easier to see. Other than that, everything is going to stay basic, offline mode, survival. And I'm going to go ahead and fire this up. Now, all of your start options are pretty much identical. There are three oddballs, which is spacesuit, which is you start with just a spacesuit in space. I can't remember if it even has planets unless you need to spawn them in. There's a space pod, which is a rather difficult way to start as well, because you have to find ice and materials quickly, because that's what keeps you alive in that ship. And Moon is the oddball out as well. Moon, you will get the same lander as all the other scenarios, with the exception of you will have wheels and a full cockpit. All the others have the exact same drop pod, and the only difference between the rest of these planets and moons is how much oxygen and how much gravity and how many resources there are. Titan is my absolute favorite. It is the easiest one personally to start with. You have the easiest access to ore and to other planets and asteroids right off the bat, even though it is a zero oxygen, quarter gravity planet. Even though it says hard, but I'll work you through that here real quick. We're going to go ahead and spawn in, and we're going to be dropping into our pod. Now, typically you can look around, you can look through the floor, see what's going on. Here, when we get into the atmosphere, I'm actually going to jump out of this to show you some stuff real quick, because it is difficult to find materials and stuff to start with, and everybody always complains about, where's the ore? Where's the ore? I can't find it. My ore detector's not doing its job, yada yada yada. See that stain on the dirt over there? See that stain on the dirt right here? That's rock, that's ore. And there's a beacon over there too. But I'm going to just fly around real quick. That's an ore deposit. See that watermark? See that watermark? That watermark? That watermark? That watermark way out there? Oh yeah, all that blue stuff? That's ice. It's super easy to survive on this planet. Also, with its low gravity, I can just jetpack back into space.
Very nice.
I don't even need a rocket ship or anything. I am above the atmosphere. I can actually escape the gravitational well of this planet with just a backpack.
Woohoo!
You don't want to, because you'll run out of air and stuff. But this planet is very easy to get away from. It's very easy to get around on. You use very little hydrogen and fuel. Use very little oxygen. So it's very easy to work with. So nonetheless, there is our landing pod, which I didn't write in, but we will cover that in a second. These are asteroids that I've hit, meteors, and we get close to it and select our drill, we should be able to tell what it is. This one's made of silicon. Let's go look at this one. That one's made of iron. And this one's made of magnesium. Magnesium is used to make some of the advanced stuff and weapons. Iron is used for everything, and silicon was it? Over here? Silicon is used, yeah, for computer chips and glass. Which, you know, if you're making a cockpit, you need glass and stuff in it. I'm going to go ahead and go fill up on hydrogen real quick. Give you a tour of the pod as well. So typically when you land, you're going to be right here. You're going to have this view when you get to the planet. When it stops moving, you can look down and see that it's turned green, saying that it's engaged in the ground, especially if you can see the ground. But if you're no longer moving and you see the parking brake indicator, I can't scroll here, but I'll mark it in the video. You see the parking brake indicator turn on, that means you are definitely on the ground. You can exit by pressing F. And when you exit and turn around and look at your ship, there is your passenger seat. I'm going to go ahead and select my torch. By holding the torch, it will identify on the right side of your screen what you are looking at and what condition it's in. It's kind of like your sonic screwdriver for Doctor Who. On the side you have a battery, and you start with a fully charged battery. So back here is your survival kit. There is a terminal for interfacing this, which will refill your hydrogen, oxygen, and heal you, as long as it has power and materials to do so. This is just an access hatch to the survival kit for storage. And then this is access to the connected network of your ship, which will include the conveyors, which we'll cover here in a minute. But this allows you to see the other pieces of equipment that are connected by conveyor, like your O2H2 generator and the passenger seat. The passenger seat is actually not connected because you cannot drag stuff through it. But you do see the inventory of the grid that you're interacting with. And then this is your H2O2 generator. Now, there are what is referred to as large grid and small grid interfaces. This is small grid in here. This is large grid out here. And then there is a large grid format and a small grid format. This is large grid format. This is small grid format. It's the same block, uses a different amount of material because obviously they're different sizes. But in order to connect to big grid, you have to use the big version of the small grid. Also, objects like these tanks can't fit through the small grid conveyor system because they're too big. And there will be objects here in a minute when we try to put it into storage that will not go into storage because they're too big for even this storage container, or of the wrong type. But nonetheless, let's get started on getting this converted so we can get ourselves over to a mineral deposit and start building. And actually, while we're here, let's go ahead and see if we can find a useful mineral deposit. What we're really looking for is cobalt. Cobalt is what's necessary for thrusters and engines and stuff of that nature. All I'm seeing is nickel in this one. Usually you'll have 2 minerals per deposit. Sometimes you'll have 3. And sometimes you'll just have one really big deposit of the same stuff. This looks like it's all nickel. Or we have something else that's further down that we just can't see with our helmet detection, our drill detection. So let's go take it. I'll show you. I'm going to go back to the. We'll cover that here in a minute too. Gyroscopes are important for that. Let's go back to our pod. Speed kills. Make sure you slow down before you hit the ground or bump into something, because you will bug on a windshield easily. Because we are going to be flying around for a bit here, I am going to go ahead and grab these bottles so I have oxygen and hydrogen on reserve. And if you look, I'll mark it in the video, it shows that I'm carrying a tank and how many tanks I'm carrying. carrying one tank of each type, and when I run out of one, it will automatically refill my suit until we expend what is in the tank. So we lift it up, and which one did we look at already? I think we went to that one, but we'll double check. But there is, yeah, let's go to this deposit first. Nope, this was nickel. This is the one we went to. There's another one right there. This one has iron. Oh, I think I saw it. Oh. Let's see a second label. You can also hit V to switch views and zoom out. It's another way to find these, but you can't see what you're walking into. But this is only showing me one deposit in this area. So let's head to that one over there. Let's see what this asteroid is. That one's iron as well. A lot of iron deposits, which is nice. Most of the stuff you build is made out of iron. And this one is nickel, iron, and a cobalt. So an easy way to find out where exactly you need to dig is look straight down when you're walking. When you're walking, yeah, my feet are underneath me now. And when it's between your feet, you are right over it. So you also look for the shortest distance. So the numbers keep going up from there, down, up, 22. Right about there. So we're going to go ahead and mark this with a GPS indicator. I usually just hit I because I pull my inventory up all the time. GPS is a tab over here. Underneath your GPS, you're going to go new from current position, and it'll automatically label it as your name and number it. And it'll be number 1, number 2, number 3, etc. unless you delete this out. And we're going to go ahead and put some cobalt. So I can spell cobalt. And then once you've typed it in, you just hit escape, and it is there on the ground. Now, another thing is that if you notice, it just shows a marker. If you want to always see it, know where it is all the time, kind of like how that is, the respawn pod is. If you want that to happen with this, you just need to go back in to that GPS, and when we were creating it or after the fact, we can put it to always show on the here. So now it'll always show up just like our ship does. So that's what's making it always show up. Alright, we want to set up camp here. And to make our landing spot a little bit easier to find, I'm just going to make a divot. All I'm doing is right clicking to remove dirt. It doesn't mine. You don't actually collect anything from it. That green unknown signal is a supply drop. Mostly it'll have like store credits, possibly some materials. The big thing is that it'll give you collectible items like this multicolored grinder and this weird colored welder. But let's go get our pod converted and get over there and start building a base. Alright, now, for starters, if you're on a planet with some atmosphere, you can use atmospheric thrusters. If you have no atmosphere on a moon or whatever, then it becomes an issue, and these then have to be sacrificed out for something else. Grates are the gateway to air travel. So if you look in here, there is a metal grid. That metal grid requires cobalt. It's also needed for storage containers and otherwise. That's why we look for cobalt first. That cobalt is important. Nonetheless, because there is an atmosphere here, and it is easy to tell if there's an atmosphere when you're landing, because you can actually see the divider as you come in through the atmosphere when your pod's coming down. NANI? Oh, look at that. That is a enemy ship. Nice. Do we want to go say hi? Let's go say hi. We're gonna die. Remember me saying it's ridiculously easy to leave this moon? Case in point. Sorry, I got seriously distracted there. Stinking shadow messed me up. Alright. Back to where we were. So if you have an atmosphere, then I would highly recommend not removing this specific turbine and this specific turbine. Oh, let's get some energy back in here again, which we can get from sitting in the seat. As you will see, is recharging me because it's connected to a powered grid because of the battery. Or we can go back to our ring around the rosy. Survival kit. And it helps to remember it. The reason why I was recommending this one and the opposite one is so that this one is not in the way of your survival kit. You don't do the ring around the rosy I just did. But because this is low enough gravity and it has enough atmosphere, we can use these to get around. And the hydrogen one, which is not visible yet. Let's just dig a little hole here to get to it so you can see it. There's a hydrogen thruster underneath here that we are able to use for thrust in this specific environment. Now, in the process of this conversion, we are going to be stripping some blocks off of here, and we will need to make at least a couple computer chip boards. So I should have actually just dug this hole normally instead of erasing dirt, because we're going to go ahead and start processing some materials. So in our survival kit, we're going to go to production, which has the survival kit selected here. If you're on a grid with other producing devices, it'll show up here under this drop down. You can select that specific device as well. But we do want to create computer chips. But in order to create computer chips, we need ingots or processed materials. To process materials, we need to create ingots, and this takes raw rock and turns it, or raw stone, and turns it into usable material. And because we want to do that with all rock that we push through this thing, we're going to queue a bunch of these. There is a multiplier system in here. If you press once, you get 1. If you hold down Control and then click, you get 10. So now we have 11. If you hold Shift, you get 100. So now we have 111. Or if you hold Control and Shift, they multiply and you get 1,000. So now we have 1,111 in queue, which is more than enough to process the amount of rock we need to. And then we're going to go ahead and queue up 1, 2, 3, 4 computers and 1 display. No, we don't even need a display. That's if we build a cockpit. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and get some dirt. I'm going to crouch and normal mouse click and hold down F to collect my stone as I go. There's a nice quality of life mod that auto collects stone when you're mining. Makes your life a little bit easier, hence quality of life. And if you notice when I'm drilling, I am moving around a little bit, kind of in a circle. Let me show you what that looks like. Whoop. Let me stop digging for a second here so you can see what I'm doing. So, just kind of walking in a circle, crouched, while drilling. The reason being is that if you just aim straight down and drill, you're going to go straight down. And you don't want to end up going straight down, because then you have to use your jetpack and everything else to get out of there, which is not really an issue on this planet, but typically it is. Let's go back to our normal view, fill up with rock. We really don't even need a full load of rock, but it's just nice to go ahead and do so since we've done the work to get it out of the ground. And then we're going to press Alt and middle mouse button to deposit everything we can. If you have something in your build queue, which is underneath your menu G, we'll get to that here in a minute, but in your build planner, you hit middle mouse button to pull those materials out, and shift middle mouse button to push the plan in to generate the materials needed for that project. So, nonetheless, speaking of G and progression, we're going to have to do some progression on here. So in order for us to tear these off and make them again, we need to know how to build them. To be able to build them, we have to learn to get there. So the progression is in your G menu, progression, and depending on what you're starting with, so like here's a basic assembler, leads to all these things that you can build. A basic interior wall leads to all these things you can build. And down the list, here's a basic refinery and the things that are associated with refinery. We are talking ships, so we start with landing gear or a magnetic hatch. So we have to start with landing gear, and then we have to do something with either tires or, conveniently enough, a passenger seat. That will also, on that same tree, unlock control mechanisms. We're going to be dealing with a remote control on this, since we only have a passenger seat. Don't want to waste materials making a cockpit. And then once we have done that, then we move into the next level, which then allows us to work with thrusters and means of locomotion and also weapons later. We will also have that same hiccup when we get into the O2 generator and the storage tanks and hydrogen drives, because we are going to be dealing with hydrogen drives here later. But nonetheless, to start our progression, I'm going to go ahead and just pick one of these feet, which is easy to get to since I made this hole. Otherwise, you can just crouch right here. If you can't quite get to this one up front because of the lip or how your ship landed, this front layer right here is pretty much useless. So you can just grind right through this front layer here. Recommendation when grinding is always grind at an angle so that you are, once you're through that one thing, you're not hitting anything else, like that and like that. There are only a couple of very important blocks on this ship. We'll point them out. Obviously, your oxygen generator, your hydrogen generator. You need air. You must keep this intact. Make sure if you ding it, you fix it right away. You don't want to get it down below the functional line, because if you don't know how to fix it, you can't fix it. Next item is your survival kit. Make sure this stays intact for a while. It is the only way that you can physically heal. And of course I made a hole right next to it. It's the only way you can physically heal. And also it's your respawn point. Without it, you end up starting all over. Now, depending on your game mode, when you log out, if it's a server, depending on your game mode, if you log out if it's a server, a lot of times your drop pod will automatically delete. And this is a scenario, the grandfather's paradox. Is if you have grandfather's axe and you replace the head and then you replace the handle, this is still grandfather's axe. In this game, yes it is. You can replace every single thing associated with this pod. Every part. You can dismantle everything. As long as one thing carries through to the next build, it is still considered your starter pod. So if you are going to tear this apart and build a new ship, tear it apart, build a new ship separate. Do not attach it to anything associated with this. In the past, I always tried to preserve the battery since it's already fully charged. When you make a new battery, it only has one blip of charge on it. And yeah, it's a real easy way to lose your stuff. Nonetheless, we're going to go ahead and squat down here and get down here to this landing gear. Damage the landing gear. Down below the functional/hack line. Hack is if it has computers. Functional is if it's mechanical, or both. And then we're just going to repair it. When we repair it, it says you have unlocked new blocks. So if we go to G and type in landing, if we go to progression and type in landing, now we have availability of these. We can actually select them and choose them. And same thing with these. They're now lit up. Which the one we want and need for this scenario is this. I'm not going to be building a solar panel, so I'm going to just go ahead and drag this down here to replace the solar panel. We will also be setting up another toolbar here shortly for building a ship. But now that we've done the landing gear, we can go ahead and do the control method, which then leads us to our thrusters. So we go back to progression here, show you again. Landing gear takes us to control mechanisms. Control mechanisms then unlocks thrusters and gyroscopes. Now, critical blocks on here, we already talked about. Survival kit and O2 generator and battery. Those are your three main important things. The rest of it, it's kind of sacrificial for the most part. If you don't want to try rebuilding this thing or having to tumble down a hill, do not break this. I'm going to highlight it differently for you. This block right here and this block right here. They're in the corners underneath this main column. That block right there. That one block right there holds this block, and the one over here next to the battery, and it holds this block, that block over next to the air generator, which then is attached to this foot and this chair. If you break this block and that one, this stuff basically tries to poke itself through the ceiling. This falls down, it's a mess. Just don't break those blocks. The rest of this, pretty much fair game. But I am going to go ahead and break this block right here, which allows me to push into here to be able to break that block back there. The highlight is a little dim, but if you're off a little bit, see how the sheet lights up in yellow? That one doesn't, but there is a faint red glow around it. I'll try and point it out in the video. And then there's the one for the beacon. This is the timing block, beacon. Timer block is associated with releasing the parachute, so it is no longer needed. The parachute we will also be getting rid of here soon to replace that with a gyroscope. But we can't build the gyroscope until we build the control mechanism. So we're going to go ahead and select our remote control from the menu. Also, show you a couple items here real quick. By default, T is enabled, which is a rotational option. So if I try and shove this back in this hole, see how it faces down? Bring it out here, it faces down. If I move it around and try and reapply it, it changes directions on me. It's like almost every time I try and apply this thing, it's facing a different direction for some reason. If you look at the bottom of our screen, see how the T is auto-rotate? Turn the auto-rotation off. Apply it to a surface. Put it in its correct orientation, which is this. You want the eye facing forward and notch in the top. The arrows face front, so there's arrows on the bottom and top. Those need to face front. There's nothing on the back. This is correct orientation to face this way. If you put it in a different orientation in here, your directions are going to be skewed by whatever that offset is of placement, which becomes very handy later for when we're doing docking. you actually install one of these backwards. So basically here, let me select another one. You actually end up installing one facing this way so that it's correct controls flying backwards on your ship for easy docking. But nonetheless, we have that in there now, so now we can go ahead and go G in the gyroscope, because we just unlocked the gyroscope. Replace that into here, and we're going to be putting the gyroscope right behind the seat. If you can't hit this angle very easily on your own, we're going to be tearing out some of the ceiling. It's very easy to get to this from above. And actually, I'm going to hold off on it because I do want that chunk of conduit for a motor for something else we're doing here in a minute. So, we're going to hit our jet, coming up here. We're going to break this plus sign out of the ship. So, cut that all the way through. We're going to cut this all the way through, which goes over the top of your survival kit. Do not eat your survival kit. Be very careful when going through this. I try and aim as much into the distance as I can. Use small bursts to get through it. Also, of course, afterwards, make sure you didn't damage it with your torch. If you did, any parts you took out of it, you can put right back in by repairing it. The battery, unfortunately, if you damage it too much, you can't replace those parts without having to fabricate them again. See, and I don't know how to make a battery yet, so I can't fix the battery because I did nick it. But there we go. We got our plus sign cut out. I'm also going to take care of this little bit of conveyor tube here. Go ahead and repair that tube. Nope, I can't undo that technology yet. That's another one we have to do for progression. So to unlock the conveyor progression, we are going to come over here and we have to build a storage container. Take this guy out so we can get in closer. Next block we're dealing with is this one right here, which is a small cargo container. We're just going to nick this to damage it and then repair it. That unlocks some stuff, so that allows us to do this cargo tubing or conveyor tubing. So now, oh, that one disappeared on us. So we'll go ahead and damage this one and then repair it. That just unlocked all that stuff. And let's go ahead and get that gyroscope in. Gyroscopes don't matter what their orientation are. They just need to be attached to a solid surface. Now we are running to where we don't have materials to do this. These are comprised of grids and steel tubes. So we are going to be sacrificing one of the 4 engines, or one of our 4 directions of movement, for that gyroscope. The gyroscope is important because if you look at this configuration right now, we have the hydrogen engine underneath and this turbine on here. We can go straight up and down. We can do this with the ship. We can go up and down. That's it. That's all this can do right now. If we put engines on here facing in all 4 directions, then we are able to do up, side to side, and forward and back. But we can't turn. We can't do this. We can't do this, and we can't do this. That's what a gyroscope is for. The gyroscope allows you to do this motion and this motion. It's more important to have the gyroscope than it is to have one of your 4 directions. Because with the gyroscope, if you are moving in this direction, you can turn around and fire your engine in the opposite direction to stop. So let's do that. Okay, I'm going to have enough inventory space to grind out 3 engines, thrusters, 3 thrusters. So let's get a thruster involved here. We're going to go ahead and create a second toolbar for some of the stuff we're going to need. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control 2 to create a new toolbar. If you notice, it does not include the tools. We're going to hit G, go to Tools, drag down our tools. And then we are going to go to All Blocks, and we want a thruster. And since we're dealing with ship construction, I might as well go ahead and go to a gyroscope in here. And a conveyor. This is a small block conveyor, and notice the plus sign, it means it has more than one in it. All of these styles of small block are inside of this one cube. So I select this one, and then the large format is this one. So basically what I'll end up doing is I'll set up this exact same bar for large format and for small format, or just switch out the multi-use ones. I always like to keep, because the default bar has number 4 as the light armor block. Whenever I create a new one, because I'm so used to it being in number 4, we'll keep a light armor block, emergency handy, in number 4. We've already created our remote block. We're going to be building engines and a gyroscope, and then once we've done that, we are pretty much good to go. So let's go ahead and select our thruster, and we are going to be putting this around the center point here. Engines have an intake side, which is this flat fan side, and then they have an exhaust side, which has the nose cone. This damages things beyond the nose cone for about 3 to 4 blocks, so do not put anything behind it. And we're going to go ahead and rotate these and put these in place. And oh, I'm running out of energy because I'm getting damaged because I have no energy, which is what keeps my suit warm and allows me to breathe oxygen from a tank. So let's recharge up. Now this goes a lot faster when I'm not explaining it. Since I have enough inventory space for 3 engines, we're going to go ahead and build those 3 engines from the ones we just tore down. The 4th engine went to the gyroscope. So we need that 4th engine to finish our 3rd engine. Now we have those parts. We can finish this engine and the gyroscope. Remember I said we needed computers? We can come back here, go to production, and we can type in 2 computers by clicking that twice, or with our wand out, we can come over here to the gyroscope we were building, right click it to add it to our build planner, then come over here and press Shift and then middle mouse button on an access panel to start that into production. Now this could have 20 things off of this. As long as it's an access panel, you can start your assembler commands from any accessible port. And now that that's in there, we can hit our middle mouse button to pull out the parts. It says right there, all parts were successfully withdrawn, which means we have everything to finish this in our inventory. And now we are ready to fly. And we are heading for Cobalt over there. We jump in our pilot seat, and since we're just sitting in a passenger seat, we can look around. If you're in control of the ship, you can't look around, because your looking around is what controls the ship. So, in order to control the ship, we have to use that remote block we installed. So we're going to hit K to access that remote control. And we're also going to reveal all the hidden stuff in this thing, because we want to enable specifically this thruster so we can get off of the ground. It's turned off by default. We also want to make it show up so it's easier to see. And then once that has been done, we're going to go ahead and hit V to change our view to double check to make sure that, oops, not yet, after we do this, okay. We're going to go into remote control, and we're going to choose to control the ship. If you notice, our view changes. Now if I move my mouse, nothing happens, because right now, I'm technically controlling the ship with my mouse. So we're going to hit V to verify that all of our stuff is working and running right. Left and right, you should see the exhaust come out of those turbines forward. And if I hit the space bar, you should see glowing light underneath. If you use Alt, you can use that to let go of control to be able to look around. There you go. You see the engine firing when I hit the space bar. That means we are good to go. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and fly it in this manner right here. If you look at the bottom right side of the screen, you can see that it is in park. We're going to release the parking brake and then hit space to lift off. Otherwise, it does nothing. Now, part of the reason for the gyroscope is to fix this. If I keep spinning by looking at the horizon, I'm fine. But if I look down and then turn, what happens is I start tilting. And that tilt can put you upside down. Q and E levels you out side to side, mouse up and down. We're heading for that cobalt, so let's go ahead and level out for that. Lift up. Be careful because this is low gravity and thin atmosphere. We do not have any engines to blow us down, and if we get out of atmosphere, then the atmospheric engines do no good. Now we have no way of slowing down since we have no reverse. So the only way we can do that is to spin around. If you use the arrow keys, it maintains levelness, and your dampeners will stop you. So go ahead and hold down control a little bit. Mine is control for crouch. Spin around here, slow down. Get a little bit closer to our little crater that we made for reference. Spin around again. Now, if you're close like this and you want to do some more precise maneuvering, use your side to sides. But if you pull a full circle, it's usually enough to stop your momentum, as long as you're not going too fast. And I'm going to go ahead and lift off again to level out the rest of the way. And set back down. That way I get all my landing gear engaged. And out we go. To be continued.